Few authors are as widely celebrated as Kurt Vonnegut. From the outside, it might be easy to mistake the acclaimed counterculture penman as one who simply writes darkly silly, sci-fi tinged paperbacks. If you actually dive into one of his works, you'll soon find that Vonnegut is much more than just a bizarre comic mind. Books like Cat's Cradle, The Sirens of Titan, and the criminally underrated Galapagos prove that Vonnegut seamlessly gives his readers a hilarious time, all while dishing up his completely unique brand of satire. While he has a ton of beloved titles to his name, most know him for his 1969 masterpiece, Slaughterhouse-Five, and for great reason. On the one hand, it's one of the best pieces of anti-war fiction that you'll find, with a powerful commentary on PTSD to boot. It might be an odd time to add that this is a strong contender for one of the funniest books ever written. Vonnegut is a master comedian, carrying readers through devastating passages of World War II set pieces by remedying our souls with his outlandish sense of humor. On top of its rich themes and tone, this is a wildly inventive story that throws any and all conventional narrative structure out the window. Vonnegut leads readers through the life of his protagonist, Billy Pilgrim, in a fashion that he refers to as unstuck in time. This acts as more than just a narrative approach, it is actually how Pilgrim experiences his own life. We're dropped in and out of various ages and events throughout his existence, jumping from middle age to childhood, forward to his elder years, back to his teens, and so on. To put it simply, Slaughterhouse-Five is one of a kind. With all of that being accounted for, it's hard to imagine how anyone in the world might try to bring Pilgrim's story to the big screen. That said, when you throw a mind like a primetime George Royhill in the director's chair, you just might have gold on your hands. What came of it was 1972's Slaughterhouse-Five, a brisk 104-minute retelling of Vonnegut's sprawling tale. Some way, somehow, Royhill pulled off the impossible and made a damn good movie out of its source material, so good that it landed a nomination for the Palme d'Or at the 25th Cannes Film Festival. Royhill's picture perfectly blends Vonnegut's trademark mix of sincerity and absurdity, all while being delivered by a cast of little-known actors whose non-celebrity statuses help these iconic characters come to life easily. Slaughterhouse-Five is an anomaly in the world of Vonnegut film adaptations. Movies like Mother Night and Breakfast of Champions have done their best to bring the author's voice to life, but with little success. Considering its degree of critical acclaim, let alone the fact that it's based on one of the most famous books of its time, how does a movie like Slaughterhouse-Five fall by the wayside to the degree that it did? It's never easy bringing books to the big screen. Ever since the advent of cinema, filmmakers have repeatedly been trying to bring their favorite literary works to life. Most of the time, fans groan over these adaptations. It's not hard to see why either. No matter how much detail a filmmaker packs into their movie, it's impossible for them to capture exactly what an author creates in a novel. Written language gives readers the room and enough tools to create their own version of the book's world. Movies, on the other hand, are what they are, leaving next to nothing for viewers to drum up on their own. Still, most books can still be justifiably adapted without ruffling too many feathers. Bringing grounded works to life hardly ever feels risky. It's when you dip into genre territory that things begin to feel unadaptable. If any book belonged in this territory, then Slaughterhouse-Five would absolutely land in this camp. While Slaughterhouse-Five's biggest hurdle might seem like the novel's unconventional structure, there have been heaps of movies that hop around through time. The biggest challenge that Royhill and company had to face was bringing Vonnegut's voice to life. The novel is told from Pilgrim's point of view, so essentially, Vonnegut is just as much the main character as his protagonist. His writing style is the essential component to what makes that book so great. Even though Vonnegut's novels aren't always told from a first-person perspective, they all still carry his singular voice. It's the reason that hardly any feature films have been based on his works and the biggest indicator of why most of his books' adaptations are unsuccessful. Thankfully, the 70s might have been the decade for dark, cynical comedies. The works of Hal Ashby and Robert Altman are more than proof of that. While Royhill might not be the first person you think of when you drum up images of that decade's great comedies, he was a fantastic filmmaker, nonetheless. Slaughterhouse-Five landed right between its director's two most famous movies, Butch Cassidy and The Sundance Kid and The Sting. Those two classics prove that Roy Hill could handle the dramatic beats of Vonnegut's novel, all while keeping things lively and entertaining. Even at its most dour, this thing continues to move at a brisk pace. Given that much of the World War II scenes are sandwiched by ridiculous scenes from other points in Pilgrim's life, Slaughterhouse-Five never stays serious for very long. No one should ever doubt Roy Hill's ability to bring weight to his movies. The real test was in whether he could make his film as bizarre and funny as the source material. Is Slaughterhouse-Five a comedic masterpiece like the book that came before it? Well, not necessarily, but it doesn't have to be. Vonnegut's narrative touch is the main ingredient in what makes his novel so funny. Everything is stated in such a dry, apathetic, unimpressed manner that you can't help but laugh over and over. That type of comedy is legitimately impossible to lift off of the page. Roy Hill's film is only as funny as it needs to be, though. Its weighty themes are balanced out with enough of Vonnegut's odd lines and ideas, giving us a movie that flows with a hypnotic, somber levity. It might not have the same tone as the novel, but it finds its own perfect vibe in the process. Without spoiling things, some might be disappointed in the way that Roy Hill brings the novel's fantastical elements to life. It's all visualized a bit more grounded than this particular reader initially imagined and avoids certain elements for lack of being able to actualize them, but makes up for everything with its cool 70s science fiction aesthetic. While Roy Hill is easy to credit much of the film's success to, the cast kills it too. Michael Sachs as Billy Pilgrim is a revelation. In the same way that Roy Hill gives his film that perfect Vonnegut tone, Sachs successfully delivers the author's dialogue in a way that is both true to the source material while also feeling natural. How he didn't have more of a career after this, I'll never know. The fact that he wasn't a celebrity probably helps a good bit in bringing Pilgrim to life. He doesn't bring any of the baggage of expectations in the same way that someone like Dustin Hoffman might have. Would Hoffman have been great? Probably, but we'd be thinking more about the rest of his career or his filmography than we would be locking into Pilgrim's journey. We don't have that problem with Sachs. Vonnegut is a tough cookie to adapt, but Roy Hill's Slaughterhouse-Five manages to carve its own path, all while doing justice to its source material. The author himself was even a fan of the movie. In the preface to Between Time and Timbuktu, Vonnegut stated, "I love George Roy Hill and Universal Pictures, who made a flawless translation of my novel Slaughterhouse-Five to the silver screen. I drool and cackle every time I watch that film, because it is so harmonious with what I felt when I wrote the book. Everyone needs to get on Vonnegut's level." Slaughterhouse-Five won't be exactly what fans expect, but it's a masterpiece in its own right, directed by a filmmaker at the top of his game and brought to life when its source material continued to linger in the cultural zeitgeist. There will never be a better time to have brought this book to the big screen. Let's hope that movie buffs come around to this underrated classic sooner rather than later. Hey, if we're all unstuck in time, then maybe everyone already has. So it goes. Slaughterhouse-Five is available to rent on Prime Video in the US.